So this book is very eclectic in form of style. It kind of oscillates between a couple of things, but also at some points it does switch between tone quite often. So
Mm.
how do you manage balancing tragedy with comedy, when to put in the funny stuff, when not to leave it out?
Hear the piano. If you're playing the piano and let's say you've hit a couple of major chords and they sound good, and then if you keep play a couple more, it's going to be monotonous. So you shift, and you can play the same notes, but make it, put them in a minor chord. So that's the feeling I got from writing this book. I would just shift the tone and shift the chords, and hope it works. I gather it works. I mean, the comments that people made, that Bill and I wrote to a number of really good writers and asked them what they thought. We didn't have to pay them much. No, I'm just kidding. And they all came back. And the thing that really is gratifying is they all got it. They didn't say the general things was, oh, this is a lovely book, beautiful, brilliant, etc. None of that. They all got what I was trying to do. The amazing Francine prose, Greg Partlow, Nick Flynn, Alice McDermott, Gary Trudeau, they all got it. And so if they all got it, I must have been saying the same thing to them.
Great. You mentioned earlier there's a part about Irish soldiers. I believe there's also a part right in the beginning about like an African village. There's a lot of cultural references within the novel, and you take on the role of like an archivist to some extent. Was there anything that you wanted to put in the novel related to cultural references that you didn't, or anything that you knew from the start that you wanted in? Absolutely.
I really tripped on this. I swear. I don't mean tripping. I mean, I really almost stumbled on all this. Uh, I read an article about the Irish soldiers. I'm interested in Ireland. My wife and I lived in Ireland for a year. So I was reading this article, and the article had this story of the Irish soldiers who lost all the battles that they were in because, according to the poet, they heard a secret music, and the secret music guided them to pity and to peace, not to war. And so I thought that was kind of beautiful. And then the African village, my cataract surgeon, Dr. Charles Cole, told me the story. I was in his office and he was examining me. And he told me the story about going to the African villages and going to a number of places that simply needed his work. And he told the story about the sticks, leading around by the sticks and the piles of sticks that amount in the clinics. So I had these two stories. I had the Irish soldiers, who one thing, and in quite a different context, the African villages, and what did they have in common? Mystery. One was had to do with what was invisible. One had to do with what was inaudible, and I put them together. And then our daughter Amy died 15 years ago, and she's always on my mind. She's always, her absence is a presence to my wife and me. So that's invisible and inaudible too. And I managed to go to her quite frequently, and I end with her, as you know.
Mhm. There's a lot of grief inside this book, but also a lot of love, and that really shines through. And it was a really beautiful read. It's again, it's a puzzle for me. It was just trying to figure out what the novel was about, seeing what it entailed, and it was just incredible. I think we read in like one day. It was great.
Good.
Um, but there's one passage that stood out to me. See if I can find the page. It's page 31. And you describe art as a false innocence.
Yeah.
Um, what is false innocent about this book, which is a work of art, really, in the most technical sense. But what is false innocent about this book? And speak speak a little bit more about that if you could.
I will. Sometimes I say something and I don't know what it means, and then I catch up with it. I have to be honest with you. And this may have been one of those cases. But I think what I meant was this. Innocence is a very important thing for an artist, to be open, to say, come at me. I'm ready to learn and receive everything you've got.
Right.
And it's not really innocence, because you've in a way calculated that. You said, this is the way I'm going to tell this story, so therefore I will create this innocence. So it's a false innocence. It's not a it's not a tricky innocence in the sense of a lie,
Mhm.
but it's not entirely authentic because you've concentrated in order to get the innocence, to win the innocence, and then to share the innocence with the reader. And I love the fact that you're calling this book a novel. I don't know what to call it either, but Gary Trudeau read the top of the thing, and it says memoir, poetry, creative nonfiction, American literature, illustration, all
Mhm.
these things. Sometimes they do these things for bookstores, but since there are no more bookstores, I don't know why they're doing this now. But
Not through Amazon.
exactly. But my guess, it's not a novel in the sense that, in the idea, it doesn't tell a fictionalized story that goes from point A, point B,
Hmm.
point C, but it does have a lot of novel elements in it.
Hmm.
It has a lot of has poetic elements in it. I would guess it's closest to a memoir because it does do a lot of remembering. But I don't know what it is, Toki. I really don't. I just, I hope people like it.
I personally loved it, Roger. So, no worries on my front. And I'm not lying to you. That's just
I am I am so glad. I couldn't be more pleased.
this is a memoir, in your words. How much of this is autobiographical, would you say? Like percentage wise, or even just like generally? Like how much of this is you just telling your story?
100% of what every writer writes is autobiographical.
Hmm.
So it's whether it's a genuine memory or a memory that's invented for the occasion. But a lot of this is stuff I just simply I remember and go back to. And of course, Amy. Everything about Amy is um, a bittersweet memory. The memory is sweet because just to think of her is sweet, and the sadness is that she's no longer here. Um, but I don't know. I mean, for example, I just opened to this page. Walking in Moscow one afternoon with a teacher at the University of Moscow, I noticed that I was being scrutinized by passersby. Nothing about what I was wearing seemed unlike the clothing of others in the street. My face looked generally European enough to pass for a Russian. I asked my companion, did I appear so different from everyone around me that they stared at me so? You don't look afraid, she said. Now, that, of course, to have that happen in the Soviet Union, where the police around every corner, had a special kind of meaning. But yes, to be sure, it is a memory, and so that it occurred in the memoir. But it wasn't because of the memory; it was because of the what she said. You don't look afraid. That it stayed in my mind. There's always a reason that we remember things,
Right.
and it's so this is why I remembered that.
Lovely. I am trying to see if there's anything particular. I want to think about something particular that stood out to me, in your answer. I guess to what extent do you think is a memoir important for authors? Like, do you recommend that every author writes some sort of memoir or jot it down
And I
even
think
some?
I think I think I think everything an author is everything a writer does is sort of part something else. If you write poetically, obviously you're writing poetry. If you are writing a memory, then it's a memoir. But a memory in the context of a fictional book, it becomes useful for fiction. Um, it's just how the author's mind works, or actually doesn't work. Sort of how it relaxes, how it sits back and says, "Come at me. Let's see what we can find." So when I say this is running the keyboard, I mean it. I'm just going up there and uh, let's see what we find, what music we find together.
Mhm.
I like that experience very much. I like the idea of I bring the reader in with me. I
Mhm.
try to make it a companionable experience.
All right. Well, that is all my questions. Do you have any closing remarks? Anything for me? Anything for anyone who's listening or reading this later?
I don't. You've been great to talk to, and just give my love to Bill.